Welcome. In front of me is a OPPO Reno 12 Pro, and today I'll go over unboxing along with a quick look. Okay, so this looks like it's one of another those devices with the push for AI powered phones. Not the biggest fan of that. But anyway, I'm gonna open it up and just see what we get in here. I'm not really gonna be focusing on the AI aspect of it, if there is even any. But I will quickly mention that this is the global version, or at least most certainly European version, because that's where I bought it. And I'm mentioning that because there is also a China version of this device, which has different specifications. So depending on where you buy them, they're both named the same, but they do vary significantly in terms of what you get inside. The appearance of the phone is almost exactly the same by the looks of it, if this is correct, but for instance, the processor inside is completely different. This one here has a Dimensity 7300 energy, while the China one has a Dimensity 9200 plus. So if I'm correct, the China one is actually more powerful than this one, though I'm not sure if bigger number is actually better. I think it might be, but take it with a grain of salt. But in any case, these are two separate different processors, so there's no doubt that they do vary while having the same name, and the only difference is it's being sold in a different region. So anyway, let's just pop it open. We got in here our paperwork and charging cable. It's a Type A to Type C, so that's pretty good. And there's no case, unfortunately. Then we get the phone itself. That's an interesting look. Now this is completely flat. It just has this kind of appearance like a basically bent metal. It looks pretty cool, I have to say. Not the biggest fan of the color, but the actual finish right here is actually nice. I do like it. Let's put it up. Now I want to point out the phone is actually relatively thin, but it still has a 5000 mAh battery. Now in a second you will see the display right here. Right now it's kind of hard to show the bezels. It might be that they're hiding it behind the 2.5D glass or whatever they're going to be calling it. Well, actually, it doesn't seem like they're calling it anything, which is pretty good. But it has the glass on the front is subtly curved. It just kind of like slants on the edges. These are the bezels that are slanted. So the display itself is, as I'll showcase, it's kind of flat. So if it has some kind of curve to it, which I think it might, you can see just a little bit of glow on the very edge, but that's like less than a millimeter. So the curve right here is, sorry for the actual colors. Hopefully it's gonna come back to normalcy in a second. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, the glass right here just has this nice slant to it, makes it a bit nicer to touch, though we also have a pre-applied screen protector, which you can see right here, so it does catch your finger when just kind of trying to, for instance, use gesture navigation, something that you might want to remove if it bothers you. But you can see that the bezels right here are fairly minimal. In person it looks actually, I would say, a bit better than it does on camera. On the camera you don't have that, you don't have the dimensions, like the depth of it. So in person, when holding it with this curved glass a bit, it does make it feel like the bezels are a bit smaller. Now, this is a 6.7 inch display, which I haven't mentioned yet, running a resolution of 1080 by 2412 pixels. It's an AMOLED display, 1 billion colors, 120 Hz refresh rate, HDR10 plus certification, and a peak brightness of 1200 nits. Now I do want to point out the HDR10 plus certification. Most phones come with HDR10, which basically means that the phone can use HDR content, as in it sees the colors of it, but it doesn't have a certification. And for instance, for phones it's not as prominent because most phones use AMOLED displays, OLED displays. So even if it doesn't have certification, it well enough can produce these kind of brightnesses, as AMOLED displays usually have pretty bright displays. Nowadays phones have like 3000 nits. This one itself has 1200 nits. But this is kind of more prominent on TVs, where you'd have an LCD TV that has HDR10, so it can be enabled So you can use HDR, but the LCD doesn't have enough brightness to do anything with it. So it can read the content, it just can't really display it, which is just, at this point, why are you including it? So this one, not only does it support HDR10, it has well enough of brightness to show you that content, and additionally it's also certified with the plus on it. Anyway, continuing on, in terms of screen to body ratio, we are looking at a 89.4% and a 394 pixels per inch, covered by a Gorilla Glass Victus 2. Now, if we flip it over to the back, we have our what looks to be a triple camera setup right here, and the main sensor is a 50 megapixel f1.8 aperture, 26mm wide lens, multi-directional PDAF and optical image stabilization. Then we get another 50 megapixel f2.0, 47mm telephoto lens with 2 times optical zoom and PDAF, and then 8 megapixel f2.2 aperture, 16mm 112 degree ultra wide lens. Now with those cameras at the back, you can record videos at 4K 30 frames, and at 1080p you can do 30 and 60 along with slow motion of 120 and 240. And at 720p you can do a slow motion of staggering 960 frames with gyroscopic electronic image stabilization, optical image stabilization, and also HDR. Now at the front, we have another pretty big sensor, which is a 50 megapixel f2.0 21mm wide lens with PDAF. Allows you to record selfies at 4K 30, 1080p 30 and 60 with gyroscopic electronic image stabilization. So those are all the cameras. Now let's talk about the internals, which obviously won't be actually able to see, so I'm just going to be flipping this phone over. But we're looking at a 5000 mAh battery, which I did mention before because the phone is relatively thin, so it does have a big battery in here. In terms of charging speed, we're looking at 80 watts of power delivery through cable with a supported charger, and they're advertising that you can get it from 1% to 100% in about 46 minutes, and in 18 minutes you get it to about 47%. And it also supports reverse wireless charging. Now, the processor in here, like I mentioned before, is a Dimensity 7300 Energy, and the device comes with 256 gigs of storage with 12 gigs of RAM. That is the base entry version of this device, and it can go to 512 gigs of storage, again with 12 gigs of RAM, on UFS 3.1 storage type. Now the storage type here is probably going to be the weaker one, as we do have like UFS 4.2 I think right now. So there's also 4.0, I think 4.1. So this one isn't going to be the fastest. I don't think it will matter this much, considering this is something that you will notice, for instance, when recording videos at 4K, for instance, 60 frames. It's the time that it takes the device to actually like write the video recording to the storage. Sometimes you will see like it's kind of buffering the videos right there. This storage I think should be good enough to not even give you this kind of buffering at 4K 30. Now, anything else that I mentioned or didn't mention yet? Build quality wise, let's actually talk about that. So, glass front, obviously. We have plastic frame, unfortunately, which is this kind of metalish kind of finish to it. Or looks metalish, but it's plastic. So obviously scuffing it up, scratching it, this will be visible as it's not as robust, it's made out of plastic. We also have a plastic back, so this is actually plastic. Now I do want to point that out, it does feel more like glass than plastic, but yeah, apparently it's just plastic. Which is kind of odd considering even this kind of like etching right here is something that I would associate with actual glass. So the OPPO logo with the writing right here, more specifically the OPPO, when this is more of a matte finish, the OPPO is obviously glass, and you can feel that basically being etched on here as a smooth reflective surface. So I'm not sure if this is correct with the plastic back. It honestly does give me more of a glass back rather than plastic, but I'm not gonna be trying to cut into it and see if I'm right. So yeah. So yeah, there we go. That's the device. Now, quickly looking at the China version of this device, I'm gonna see if there's any kind of differences at a quick glance, and just see. Apart from the processor, it looks like everything is about the same. One more thing that I didn't mention right here is the device comes with Android 14 and a ColorOS 14.1 on here as a skin over the Android. And right now we are right about to be releasing probably Android 15. I've already seen beta versions of it on Pixels, so this device will obviously get Android 15 as well. So that plus Android 16 most certainly should be coming to this device as well. Though obviously that's going to be like probably a year later. So there we go. Anyway, with that being said, hopefully you found this video helpful, and if you did, don't forget to smash like, subscribe, and thanks for watching.